Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roots and Hoots, a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Since 2020, we have been gathering, laughing, learning hard truths, and sharing in community conversations with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. Each episode, we learn something new, and we're excited to be sharing this journey with you. Roots and Hoots is about connecting with and celebrating Indigenous people's contributions to their fields of study, work, and cultures. We also speak with allies who share how they are furthering the work of reconciliation in Canada. To learn more about the Legacy of Hope Foundation and the work that we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.
In this episode of Roots and Hoots, host Gordon Spence is joined by Anita Cardinal, a proud Cree woman and grandmother who shares her journey about becoming a lawyer later in life. Anita shares how her discipline and healing practice of running has strengthened her physically, mentally, and spiritually. Anita serves as in-house counsel for her nation, the Woodland Cree First Nation in Treaty 8 territory, and she is the founder of Indigenous Runner YEG, where she organizes ultramarathons for Indigenous runners, and is the race director of Edmonton's annual Run Conciliation. In this episode, Anita speaks to the importance of action in truth and reconciliation, emphasizing that real progress comes from taking tangible steps forward. Tune in for this powerful and uplifting conversation on Roots and Hoots.
We're going to be talking with Anita Cardinal from Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome. Hello, Anita. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Tanse, I'm very well, and thank you for having me.
Oh, yes, you're Cree. Tanse, yes.
Oh, yes.
I missed that part of your autobiography, but why don't you tell us a bit about your home community and your family and your cultural background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from Woodland Cree First Nations, so that is Treaty 8 territory, more towards northern Alberta. I don't want to say northern Alberta because there's many more northerner First Nations above us who remind me that we're not really as north as we think we are. And I differ to them. They're absolutely right. But we are about 5.5 hours north of Edmonton. And
That's north. That's very north, actually.
yeah. Then you have the other communities that are like even north, like on the border of NWT, and they're like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Do you have any like Dene in Alberta?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they're even more. Yes, they're up higher there, the Dene.
Yeah.
So they
And
are lots of Dene over just in northern Alberta. Yeah.
oh, really? They're inside the Alberta border.
Yep.
Oh,
Absolutely.
really? Okay.
Yeah, they're
And then-
part of Treaty 8.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get and then you have Métis up there too, and you have
Oh yeah,
Inuits.
Métis all over the place. Yeah, Métis.
Inuits.
I know here in Edmonton, there is a society that's there's a group of people that had settled here as well too. So like
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, definitely lots of relatives all around us, and yeah, so I live in Edmonton right now. For the last 14 years, I went to university here and kind of
Yeah.
off and back since I was like in my 20s, just going to go to college, university, and then, but I go home quite often because I'm also in-house counsel for my nation,
Oh,
for our CFS society, and yeah, all my family, my mother, my father, my brother lives back home, and we get lots of opportunities to be be able to visit home and be home and serve the community.
yeah. The Woodland. You said the Woodland Cree Nation, right?
Blanc
Tell
Creek
us a little bit about that. Like that community is. What's the population, and are there any other Indigenous groups that live within that community, or?
Oh, yeah. So there is really up there in our area. There's so many First Nations close. Like right beside us, we have there's a Métis settlement is right beside us. Just hop over that. There's the Little Buffalo, and then you have Whitefish. There's so many First Nations all very close around. Like we have Duncan First Nations that are nearby. Like so, lots of community. A lot, yeah, and Métis, of course. as well. So we have a lot of nations that
Yeah.
we just had our treaty days that just happened a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
on our nation, and so we always have like people that come from different nations. Last year we hosted like the Treaty 8 nations, so they all were
Hmm.
there. So that's always a great way to to connect and visit,
Yeah.
share.
Did you get your $5?
Yeah, I got $35 because it's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
They
my
do.
bullets
Do they
which I
do?
give to my dad.
Do they do the lineup? You got to line up, right?
Oh, you gotta line up for your
And you
five.
get you handshake with the RCMP.
Oh, yeah, they're always the handshake.
They give you the $5. Yeah, that's what they do back on my reserve too.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you were growing up, you grew up on in your community of Woodland.
Yeah, since I was like 15, it was so Woodland was signed an addendum to Treaty 8 in 91. And so at that time, well, go back even farther when my father lived in the community, when he grew up there, there was a forced like relocation of a lot of our members from one part that was like a little bit more into the, in the nation. Well, it was at that time, but they were in part of the land uh they were living peacefully and kind of away from, any settler like towns and
Yeah.
reserves, and so they got relocated, unfortunately, and violently. I guess,
Really? Oh,
yeah, and their homes bulldozed down, and they had to be moved closer to town and on like closer to access to settler communities,
hmm,
and which has happened many times to our communities over and over again. And so kind of our nation members got kind of dispersed, and my father and his family, some of them moved to Dawson Creek, and then from there we like settled. Their family settled in the Métis Nation of East Prairie settlement, and that was over by High Prairie, so not too far from where we
hmm.
are now. But yeah, so the addendum was signed and to Treaty 8, and then also my grandmother got her rights back, and she when she married my grandfather, he himself a full, he's full Cree. He was full Cree, and he lived in the bush and on the land there, but he didn't have a status. So when she married him, she lost her status.
Okay.
And then so of course when we had that rectified in the 80s, then all of our family got our status back, and then we had signed on to
Yeah.
as members to and created Woodland Cree First Nation. So all of us moved back, all of our family got to move back to our actual home, and when I was about 15 years old. And yeah, so grew up there ever since. And then I went to college and university and
Yeah.
pursued education.
It must have been challenging for you to, after being relocated and to know your language and your culture. I mean, your traditional lifestyle that
Oh.
your ancestors used to live.
Well, that was that had happened when my father was very little, right? And his
Yeah.
family.
Okay.
But for my dad, he that's his first language. His first language is Cree. And he is yeah, so both of my grandmothers actually on both my father's side and my dad's side attended the same day school slash residential school, Greer
Yeah.
Mission. And so my dad went there as well. So he was also second generation that went there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, his language yeah, so that was his first language is Cree, and
Yeah.
unfortunately he did not teach it to me and my brother.
Hmm.
Even though we heard it spoken our whole lives, and obviously we know lots of words and we can understand part of it, but it was not encouraged for us to speak it by
Right.
anybody, like the elders, anybody else in the family. And I often wonder why. I know why now, right?
Yeah.
I know why now. And it wasn't because he was trying to, uh, keep that away from us. It was obviously something that was taught in residential and day schools, is obviously to just separate from those ways of knowing our language. And also, I know he wanted to, in his own way, try to protect me from racism in the future. So having that heavy accent, would be a way to fit in easier. So not having that, right? So
Yeah.
and there was just so much pressure, and we know all of whys, and it's good to know now because I didn't know before. And I
Mhm.
always wondered. But yeah, so now with my own children and my grandson, I have a 7-year-old grandson. I do my best, and we have like weekly, kind of like new Cree word of the week that we integrate into. So it's a slow process.
Yeah.
It is a very slow process, and I my greatest wish is when I leave this world to go to the next journey of my existence is to fluently know my own language.
And now, a word from our sponsor. From humble beginnings in Stoughton, Saskatchewan, building town halls and brick schoolhouses, PCL Constructors has grown into one of Canada's most respected construction leaders in major infrastructure projects. PCL Constructors is a 100% employee-owned company with a strong commitment to safety, quality, diversity, and integrity. With a proud history of innovation and excellence, PCL continues to set the standard, not just for the quality work it builds, but for the healthy workplace culture it fosters. To learn more about PCL Constructors' projects and services, visit PCL.com. PCL Constructors is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey into law school?
Thanks.
How did it develop?
Yeah, you know what? I there's always been a desire to go to law school since I was 15 years old and I was junior high. And there was these boys in the class, and I was always competing academically with everybody, like, everybody in class. But there was a specific little group of boys, and they were non-Indigenous, and I grew up in a town that was like a lot of Indigenous peoples as well too. So there was lots of nations and Métis nations, and obviously a lot of white folk as well, predominantly. And but yeah, there was always this little group of like these boys, and they would be talking about how they were going to go to law school, which is like great that they had that aspiration.
Yeah.
And I started to think to myself, well, geez, I'm just as smart as them, if not smarter. I can go to law school too. And so I wrote in my junior high yearbook beside my picture that says, and I have the picture of it. It says, what would you like to be, your goals? And I said that I'd like to be either to be a lawyer or an actress.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I forgot all about it, and
Yeah.
we were pretty poor, right? So I could never buy the yearbook. So when I became a lawyer, and I do my best to put myself out there and to represent, and so I was in the news quite often, and I heard somebody had seen me, and they sent me a private message on Instagram and said, I don't think you remember me, but we went to school together back in junior high, and I saw you on the news, and I thought that you might be interested in seeing this. And so she sent me the picture of my yearbook, of the junior high yearbook, where it said, that quote that I had, and I forgot all about it.
Yeah.
And so it was really neat to see 30 years later, because it took me 30 years. So I finished law school when I was 45. So I'm 49 right now. And so it took me 30 years to get to that point in that between that time. So it was really nice to like be able to go back and look at my 15-year-old hopeful self. And unfortunately, along the way, why it didn't happen sooner. I was a young mother at 17 years old. So I had my son when I was 17, and, I was a teen mom and worked really hard, went to university, and first went to college, community college, and then university. So my dad was always encouraging that education was the best way for us to obviously get out of poverty, to
Yeah.
learn, to protect ourselves. And so that's what I did. And then obviously that desire to be a lawyer was always still within me. So I went to university to become did a paralegal diploma at Grant MacEwan University, and I did that for like 10 years. And I thought that was the highest I could ever go, right? So I was like, that's it. I'm not that's as high as I could go because being a lawyer is out of the realm of possibilities now because I'm just getting too old and maybe I'm not smart enough and all of these things that come into play with doubts on following your dreams.
Yeah.
But I had somebody encourage me, and I never met another Indigenous lawyer until I was in my 30s. And that was another motivating factor. I was like, wow,
Hmm.
we can become lawyers. And
Yeah.
then I started working on some files as a paralegal that really propelled me to say, you know what? I'm gonna go and finish my do my Bachelor of Arts. And I started working on that like early morning before work. I'd go to early morning classes, I'd go to evening classes to do that. And I didn't really say it out loud that that was my plan, that I was going to apply for law school. But I it only came out when I met the other Indigenous lawyer, when I started to talk to other people that were like, yeah, go do it. You can do this. And so I applied to law school to the University of Alberta, and that was the only place I was going to apply to. If I didn't get in, I probably would have never applied anywhere else.
Yeah.
And thankfully I was accepted. It is a it's been a long journey, but it's been a very lot of hard work involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I uh I have a daughter who is a lawyer
Hmm.
also, and I have a son who just got called to the bar.
That's
And
exciting.
yeah, and just to let you know, just how what happened was he got turned down about 2 years in a row,
Mm.
and he had written on his in his book. He says, "I am going to be a lawyer someday," and he showed it to me after he got called to the bar. He said, "I wrote this on a piece of paper in my book." That I was going to be, and he was resilient, he was determined, and he finally got it done. So we're really proud of him. Yeah.
Wow.
And you too, Indigenous people I find are quite resilient when, when we want to do something, we want to achieve something, we give it our best, and somehow we usually achieve what we want to do. So, and I congratulate you on, achieving, you know, your
Yeah.
lot, and I wish you well. But I wanted to talk to you about, I want you to talk to us a little bit about the important work that you've done with the 60 scoop, okay, first of all, and also the forced sterilization of Indigenous women.
Yeah.
More people should be aware of this.
Just do
Talk a little
that.
bit about your career, what you did in with the 60 scoop, first of all, and then maybe with the sterilization of Indigenous women.
Well, you know what, my time as a paralegal, I was working for a firm that I got to work on those files as a paralegal.
Yeah,
So the support, right? To talking to to um to victims of the 60s to forced sterilization, and started to also that obviously opened up a lot. But what really, and there was other class actions as well that I was able to be support in as a paralegal. But those are the ones that really made me say I need to do this work as a lawyer rather than as a
mm,
paralegal, where I can affect change more and help guide things in a way that because all of these files were being ran by non-Indigenous lawyers.
yeah. Why don't you
Um,
just stop there for a minute? I want you to maybe just explain what a paralegal does.
oh, okay. So paralegal does we do a lot of, or we, I guess not we anymore. That's not me anymore, but it's I have such respect, and you have a good paralegal will know more than new lawyers by far.
Yeah.
And that is like doing the process, doing all of the putting the documents together, filing all
Re-
of these documents. It's for
Research as well.
do research. There's, depending on the paralegal, right, the scope of what they do, they are absolute masters of their trade, and their knowledge is incredible. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you have a good paralegal as a lawyer, you will succeed.
Yeah.
So that is, yeah, so you do all of that. And then at that time, while I was a paralegal, I was also doing my Bachelor's of Arts in night school. And I was at one class, and I think it was like a sociology class, and they played a video that of forced sterilization and about the Forced Sterilization Act in Alberta. There was two provinces in Canada that had actual legislation about forced sterilization that affected people with disabilities and Indigenous women.
Yeah.
So that allowed them to obviously sterilize these groups of people. And
what was the reason behind forced sterilization? Like you said that a couple of provinces
yeah,
had legislation actually,
yeah. Well,
in the province.
forced sterilization is an act of genocide. It is what colonial states do and fall back on quite often. It's a tool of genocide.
To prevent children from being born.
Yeah. So I had grown up listening to my mother talk about her longing to have wished she had more children than just me and my brother.
Yeah.
And she'd always talk about it with such sadness, and she'd say, I always wanted at least three or four children, but I could only have two because back in those days, women didn't have a choice. And I'd listened to her since I was a little girl talk about how women didn't have a choice back then. I always thought that was so horrible and so terrible. She'd always say it with such sadness in her voice. And so she would always tell me this story about how, women didn't have a choice back then. It was up to the doctors. It was up to my dad and the doctors, and it wasn't up to them. So when I watched that video about the Forced Sterilization Act, and another Indigenous woman came on and talked about how she was forced sterilized, it was in that exact moment that I realized what happened to my mother, A, was a crime, and B, she didn't know that it
She
was
didn't
a
know.
crime. She didn't know.
Was she forced sterilized?
Yes.
They did this to her, and she
Yeah.
was not aware that they
Well,
did
well,
this to
no,
her.
it was forced and coerced sterilization. So there's
Okay.
two different tactics that they use. They'll even I mean, this is a very big conversation. There's many women that went to surgery or like Indian hospitals and went for surgery, and then like they've come out and they wondered their lives why they couldn't have children. Then find out later that they were actually sterilized in this and doing maybe a routine procedure or something like appendix or not appendix, but like if there's something, they also sterilized them. And then you
Yeah.
had situations where they were coercing and Indigenous women to have sterilization procedures where they'd be like, listen, you've had enough children, shouldn't have any more, you can't have any more, you need to get this done, and this is going to be done. And so then they do that. So that happened right after my brother. And
Oh,
they did that. So that was like months of like constantly bombarding her and my father in little rooms separately to say this has to be done. You have to do this. You don't have a choice. So I realized at that time that this was, mom didn't realize this was a crime. She also used to always say this happened back in those days, women didn't have a choice. No, that's not the truth. It's Indigenous women who didn't have the choice.
yeah. Yeah.
And non-Indigenous women always had that choice,
Yeah.
unless of course, you were disabled and you fell in under that legislation. So coming to talk to her about that, and I worked at a firm that did class actions like this on this scale. So I had first of all talked to the senior lawyer and saying, is there any way we can do something about this? Is a class action possible? Because no one knows about this. I didn't, even my mother doesn't know, and this happened to her. And if she's willing to be the representative plaintiff, could we do something? In a matter of hours, it was started.
Yeah.
And that's another long story. Unfortunately, this is still an ongoing saga. That was a 2018 that was
It
started.
hasn't been settled yet.
Hasn't even been okay. No, so there's different class actions across Canada. We in particular Saskatchewan, there's the forced sterilization of Indigenous women in Saskatchewan that was started, and that one is still waiting for word to see if the class action has been certified, because when you start a class action, it has to be certified, and certification means that you have to ask for permission from the government to sue it. Basically,
Oh,
you have to follow these legal tests in order to do that.
you have to ask somebody if you can sue them.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the
you can
federal
sue me.
government.
Jeez.
So, unfortunately, the Alberta class action was heard for certification finally in January, and just last month it was denied certification because of some flaws in the. But my mother went through this. We've talked. She's done many interviews that have not just nationwide people learning about it, but like worldwide. Uh,
Yeah.
so it because of her story and her experiences, and other Indigenous women with that have been victims of forced sterilization, there have been movements that have been happening. Like the Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice was created, and we just went to the national gathering just a few months ago. I brought my mother there, and to see all these women together to be able to talk, there was so much healing that she was able to do from that. There was so much that came out, and she said, even if there's not always a win in court, there's other wins, other places, and this was a win for,
Yeah. Yeah.
for us to do. It's amazing that there's that support, and we continue the fight now to this day, and doing it in a different way now. So
Yeah.
that fight is not over. We have other avenues that we are pursuing, and we're continuing doing that. And I will be doing that as a lawyer.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Ayaya songs are about our histories. Ayaya is an Inuit-owned firm that tells our stories in many languages across Canada. They are experts in publishing children's books, usually in syllabics, and they do large multi-language projects like the reports of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission. If you need help getting your stories into classrooms or homes in Cree, Inuktitut, or other Indigenous languages, check them out at ayaya.ca. That's ayaya.ca. Ayaya is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
Yeah. I just find it incredibly fascinating. Very, very, I don't know the word to describe it, but it's a kind of anger and a bit of everything. Troublesome, to know that people actually, debated this in a court of law and passed it,
Yeah.
without people finding out about it, without Indigenous people knowing about it, and it's just incredibly crazy and stupid. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about you mentioned it in your bio about Indigenous law and Aboriginal law. Is there a difference?
Absolutely. And I get this question quite a bit from, like, especially like you have other lawyers that serve Indigenous communities, and they'll sometimes say they practice Indigenous laws. Well, non-Indigenous people cannot practice Indigenous laws. Indigenous laws are for Indigenous people to practice. Aboriginal law is what they should say. So Aboriginal law is the Think Indian Act, right? Aboriginal law
Yeah.
is like how we are governed by the government. Now, Indigenous laws is our own ways of knowing our own laws and how we govern ourselves.
Okay.
So those are two vastly different things.
Yeah. You've also worked in various capacities with your nation.
Mhm.
How does it feel like this isn't like you feel this is a calling for you, and talk a little bit about the work you
Oh,
did do
right.
for your.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had the opportunity to work for my nation when I was younger, just out of like community college, and worked as the executive assistant. I work as the education counselor for a couple of years. So I'm like always going back home, and then going back to university, and now I'm in-house counsel for our CFS society. And that is helping my nation too, like with policy bylaws, as well as like developing our own laws under Bill C-92. Well, the act.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And it is obviously that's what I wanted to do. One of the other reasons besides obviously helping to advocate for sterilization, and working on those files especially with my mother, being able to work with her for that long and continue that work. I also want to advocate for children in care, and
Yeah.
Indigenous children in care. We know are overrepresented, and that is so much worse than at the height of residential school. We know our children in care.
It's
And
a
so
billion
that,
dollar business, eh?
yeah,
It's,
oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So I wanted to be a lawyer so I could represent children in care. So I'm also a roster lawyer for the Office of the LRCY here in Edmonton, which is legal, or Alberta, which is legal representation for children and youth in care. So I'm children's counsel as well. And so being able to work with my nation to develop our CFS laws and then also be children's counsel in the province. And in the province, I think there's like a little over like around 100 lawyers on that roster. And I think only six to eight are Indigenous.
Yeah,
So the fact that most of the clients are Indigenous is obviously we need more Indigenous lawyers working in this field. And it will help obviously guide us helping our nations do this work as well too, because we can see how our own CFS laws are being treated in the courts, and then at the same time do that. So I mean it's work that we need more Indigenous lawyers in
yeah.
doing. Yeah, so
My brother is a social worker and by trade, and he had adopted, foster cared a number of children, Indigenous children in his home. Um, but he did really well with that in terms of looking after them, and I think he's actually adopted two boys and a girl. But
yeah. Yep.
his biggest concern was at the time, was when he was fostering other kids, was that when they became 18 years of age, they were basically kicked out of the foster home with
Yeah.
nothing to, no support services at all, and basically left on their own to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, what's your feelings on that?
Well, obviously, I think that's like a horrific and violent thing to do. It's destroying and it's not setting anybody up to succeed.
Yeah,
But I do know of some now when you age out, there are some programs. Obviously it varies in different provinces with regards to like having, okay, so what's the next step? So providing them, getting them housing and things like that. Obviously, it's probably underfunded. I imagine that's something that needs a lot of attention. And then as for Indigenous people and I think it's really important that our nations have supports for those children who are aging out. So as we develop our laws in our
right.
nations,
Yeah.
also having those kinds of supports and always thinking of that community embracing and
Hmm.
supporting and loving and getting to them to this place where they can be self-sufficient and they have the means
Yeah.
to be able to do that. So that is something that we're focusing on my nation, and I know a lot of nations as well are focusing on that. So it's
Yeah.
baby steps.
It's actually an excellent idea, and hopefully people follow through with it. Because I think, when this is happening, it's not surprising that a lot of our people end up in prison systems because they're just
Exactly.
not prepared properly to advance in their life, the next steps of their life. Uh,
Mm,
Also, let's talk a little bit about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
mm,
And it's the 10th anniversary of the release of the TRC's 94 calls to action.
hmm.
What are your thoughts on the progress made to date, and what's missing to speed up this? They've been kind of lagging behind, and it's
Yeah, I mean, we know when I was in university, we did this blog for this whole semester. We got credit for it. It was great, but we was a blog on analyzing each of the TRC calls to action and what has been um completed. And at that time,
yeah,
and I think it was like 2021, there was like 13 that had completed at that time. And like right now, let me do a quick search. I don't think it's much more than that.
yeah,
Uh, so I mean, how slow it is. I mean, we see no doubt about it. We see some communities, municipalities, cities, and organizations trying to implement it to what they can themselves and
yeah,
move forward with reconciliation. Um, the journey of reconciliation, because I always remind people that reconciliation is not an end goal. It is something that we do every day. It's setting things right, and that's a journey that we are on.
yeah,
Um, and that will continuously be on. And so that is something, obviously that we can all practice ourselves and encourage as Indigenous people working in all kinds of areas, can help to encourage that continuance of those furthering those calls of action everywhere we go. And that's something that I hope to do as well too, is to be a part of that process. And we all are part of this process. Talking on this podcast is a part of that process.
Yeah.
Reminding people of their obligations of our treaty relationship,
Hmm.
and how much farther we got to go and helping
Yeah.
further that. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of progress that has been made, and that's really sad.
Kind of reminds me of the this guy I was talking to. He's a musician, and he had just released their first album, and they were pretty high, and in terms of they were really enjoying life, and thought they had finally reached the pinnacle of their careers, and
Mm.
and they said that the way he described it was, we'd come out of the woods only to realize we got an ocean to cross. So it's
Oh,
that's kind of like the
really?
scenario you're talking about, right? Like we got still so much work to
Um,
do. Yeah.
yeah, and I was just looking it up, and it's still at 13 calls to actions that
Oh,
have been
really? Jeez.
completed.
Yeah.
And a lot of like headway into some other ones as well too, but it is a painstakingly slow process.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's gonna all of a sudden speed up overnight. So we still
No.
have so much work
It's
to
a
do.
long process. It's going to take many years to,
Generation.
achieve.
It's
Yeah, generations for
really
sure. Yeah.
generational
Yeah.
work.
Well, at least it started, and we are doing, many of us are doing work to try and,
Yeah.
move things along a little faster than they should be moving.
Keep the
You also,
conversation going. Yes.
yeah, you also have a passion for trail running. I call it marathoning. Marathon. You like to run. It would appear that you're a community organizer at heart.
Thank you. Yes, it's my balance in life, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Running is healing, running is medicine. I say this often, running is medicine, running is ceremony, and running is sacred. And
yeah,
and it's been something that I've done since I was little. My dad was to this in this day and time, he would have been an elite runner at this day and time if he had the resources.
yeah.
I'm always inspired by him because my mother always keeps this picture of him in the Dawson newspaper, and he was in jeans and moccasins and a t-shirt and a little a headband on our bandana, and he had just finished a marathon in like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and that's elite running in his moccasins.
Yeah,
To this day, to finish 42 kilometers in that time, that's elite running.
yeah.
And so I just was always in awe of that. And so I always ran everywhere. He runs everywhere, and he's in the 70s now, and he just finished a 5K last year because he was
That's pretty good. Yeah,
yeah, he's still at it, right? He's always hunting and keeping busy.
yeah.
And so I ran for like, you because it was joyful in school, and I was always on track and all of that. And then I kept running as I was older, but I didn't sign up for races until I got like in my 30s, because it's such an intimidating thing as an Indigenous person to be in these spaces that we're not usually welcomed in, or in or seen in. So I started, it was a lonely place. So I started going from 5Ks to 10Ks to half marathon. Then I jumped to
Hmm.
50 kilometers,
Yeah,
started ultra marathon in, trail races and like the mountains and Canadian Death Race, and, all these crazy races that were, hard, and I was just invigorated by it. I got a lot of healing from it. It opened doors for me in ways that I didn't think. It actually got me into law school. Was a story that I tell. And they're like, how could running get you into law school? When I was in my second year, I had my Indigenous, there was an Indigenous advisor, counselor, and she was like, I was on the admissions uh, committee when the Indigenous candidates were being considered, and your name came up, and there was a white professor who was arguing against you being admitted to law school. And we were arguing, obviously for you, and he was nope, no, no, no. And then somebody took your file and laid it on the table and said, listen, this woman can do ultra marathons. She can do law school, and shut them right up. And I was admitted.
Yeah, that's good. That's
So, I
such a
mean,
good story. Yeah.
And now, a word from our sponsor. From humble beginnings in Stoughton, Saskatchewan, building town halls and brick schoolhouses, PCL Constructors has grown into one of Canada's most respected construction leaders in major infrastructure projects. PCL Constructors is a 100% employee-owned company with a strong commitment to safety, quality, diversity, and integrity. With a proud history of innovation and excellence, PCL continues to set the standard not just for the quality work it builds, but for the healthy workplace culture it fosters. To learn more about PCL Constructors' projects and services, visit PCL.com. PCL Constructors is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
So and yeah, I jumped to ultra marathon. I did my first 100 kilometer in the Arizona desert a couple years ago.
Wow. That's
And
far. That's a
I
lot. Really good.
and
That's a
like yeah.
100 kilometers is not easy. That's a difficult feat. Yeah.
And so I was just in Whitehorse running this weekend with my Indigenous running group. So I created Indigenous Runner to bring Indigenous runners together. I
Yeah.
started Orange Shirt Day Run Walk, which is in Edmonton. It's our 5th annual this year. We sell out every year.
Hmm.
And it's like there's 750 people registered last year. We're on track to sell it again this year. And we started one in Saskatoon. So yeah, indigenousrunner.com. People can find lots of information. I just started a medicine run in ultra here at the end of August in Edmonton. So I reach out to other Indigenous runners and we help pay for registration fees to go into races. We're in a race this weekend called Sinister Seven. It's 160 kilometers, and we wear our ribbon running skirts, and we represent and we go and talk to the communities, and
So
we
is it like a relay?
yeah, it's a relay and solo. There's crazy people that do 160K, the best
Oh
kind of
my God.
crazy, but we we do it as a team. We have a team of 7, so each of us it's like 30 hours. So one person
Yeah.
goes and the next and the next, and we
Wow.
hopefully make it within the time cutoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a cousin. I have a cousin who's a marathon runner also. And she's been to Boston and New York and
Oh,
stuff
you
like that.
should tell her to get a hold of us.
I got your, it's
She needs to come run with
in,
us.
indigenousrunner.com, you said, eh?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Got it. Yeah, tell her to get a hold of us.
Maybe
I'm
you met her
always so
before.
excited.
She was a former chief of our reserve.
What? Well,
She's quite the lady. She's quite ambitious person. She's a runner. She's also been she's been a chief, and she was also a high school principal, a teacher. So you probably have a lot in common with her.
she
So
sounds fascinating, and
yeah,
I'm excited. Hopefully, I get to meet her. So
yeah. I will pass on your information to her. The last question is about reconciliation. And
Mm.
when we talk about you mentioned a bit about it earlier about reconciliation. What comes to mind when you hear the word reconciliation?
Setting things right. And I also have heard other elders talk about reconciliation, about like how oftentimes it's put on Indigenous people to lead the way. Um, and or it's oftentimes put on our shoulders to be the ones to be doing the hard work when this is work that needs to be done by not by the government, by organizations, by all of the things that were put in place and to suppress us, to commit genocide against us.
Yeah.
So all of that hard work must be done. I mean, Indigenous people, what do we have to reconcile with? Like, this is stolen land we're on. Like, I mean, so it's
Hmm.
like, yes, we have to come together, but I mean, they constant I hear like, oh, we have to come meet in the middle. Like, I mean, I think reconciliation, and when you're looking at it from and as non-Indigenous people, as the government, they need to come this way and do that hard work so that we can finally come together in the middle. And so reconciliation, like I said, is not an end goal. It is a journey that we are all on together. But let's recognize the imbalance of that work
Yeah.
and how it's still being enacted today. Like
Right.
land acknowledgements, we see these land acknowledgements, and now I see Indigenous people being asked to do land acknowledgements.
Mhm.
Why are we being asked to do land acknowledgements? We know whose land we're on. It's you who need to do the land acknowledgements and acknowledging the land that you're on and whose land it is and
Mhm.
traditional territories, and then how you can do to do your best, like with regards to like non-Indigenous people and organizations that are doing these land acknowledgements and government aid. They need to, it's their job to recognize whose land they're on. We know whose land we're on. So yeah, so that's my reconciliation. It's a word that I think comes with a lot of different feelings, right? So sometimes it makes Indigenous people angry hearing that word because it's often feels empty. And one of the things that I talk about, like for my running, I call it run conciliation, because without action, reconciliation is not possible. And so, I mean, we can't just, it can't just be talking. It has to be action. And, I put that in my everyday life is like talking about that and forwarding that and how we want to work together. And that's why I think why Indigenous people work so hard and they'll go that extra mile because we do want to work together. We want to make
Yeah.
change and we want to do it in a really good way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well
Yeah.
said. Thank you, Anita. I've been talking to Anita Cardinal. She's a lawyer from the Woodlands Cree Nation in Alberta.
Mhm.
So, I want to thank you on behalf of the Legacy of Hope Foundation and for the wonderful work that you're doing. Quite impressive, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about what you do.
Same. Thank you. And yes, please, keep in touch and thank you. Appreciate you so much.
Kusima.
Roots and Hoots is a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. For episode show notes, please visit the podcast description and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more information about the work we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.